Okay, so we're going over geometric series and interest today. So, wait. Okay, so first we're going to do our homework review. Okay, so first we're going to do the homework review. So, problem 1 was multiply out the expression ax squared plus b times bx plus c. So in the chat, please type your answers. And also in the chat, I got a question asking, how do you know if the parabola is thinner or thicker than x squared? So if it's thicker than x squared, that means the the coefficient, so the number that x squared is multiplied by, so the coefficient of x squared is going to be greater than 1 if the absolute value of it is greater than 1 if it's thinner than the parabola. Otherwise, if it's thicker, then that coefficient, the absolute value of that coefficient is going to be less than 1. So yeah. Okay, so I see 2 answers in the chat, so good job to Nikita and Wanda for answering. So the answer was the answer was AB x cubed plus AC x squared plus B squared x plus BC. So good job. Now problem number 2. What is the coordinate of the vertex of the equation x squared plus 4x plus 3? What are the roots? So when some people answered this question, they forgot to put the vertex or they forgot to put the roots. Make sure you're answering all parts of the question. So I have one answer from Nikita, and I will wait for another answer. Okay, so someone else answered. I'm going to wait for another answer. Remember to find the vertex, to find the roots. Oh, okay, it's okay if you missed this part from last class. The recording is currently being uploaded to YouTube, so I will put that in the Google Classroom. Okay, so the coordinate of the vertex, so let me explain. Okay, so the way for you to find the root of the equation is the way for you to find the roots of the equation is to use the quadratic formula, right? So you do negative b, which is 4. So negative 4 plus minus radical b squared minus 4ac. So this would be 16 minus 12, which is just 4. And then you divide by 2a, so 2 times the coefficient of this. So the coefficient of x squared is just 1, so we get negative 4 plus minus radical 4 over 2. And this is just equal to negative 4 plus or minus 2 over 2. And this simplifies to negative 3 or negative 1. So that means that the roots are negative 3 or negative 1. Now, the way for us to find the vertex of the equation is to find the x value that's halfway between the roots and then plug that into the equation. Because, okay, let me just draw a graph quickly, right? If you have this graph, right, and you have this and you have this, then that would mean, and because the graph is symmetric, has symmetry around the vertical line that goes through the vertex, that means that this side and this side will be congruent, so like that length would be congruent, so it makes sense that the vertex would be in the middle of those 2 points. So that would mean that you, so that would mean that, you would get the x coordinate for the vertex would be the average of negative 3 and negative 1, which is negative 2, comma, and then you plug that into this equation, you get 4 minus 8 plus 3, and that's just 7 minus 8, which is negative 1. So that means the roots of this equation are negative 2, comma, negative 1. So, that means the vertex of this equation is negative 2, comma, negative 1, and that means the roots of this equation are -3 and -1. So yeah, good job to everyone who answered. Okay, so also I just want to ask, does anyone have any questions? Because it's I know that a lot of people either got this wrong or they did not do it. So does anyone have any questions about this part, about this question? And in the chat, say no questions, and I will give you half a point. And if you ask a question, I will give you a point. Okay. It's okay if it's laggy. I think that's probably my internet, but it might not be. So yeah, this is just a solution. Okay. So problem 3. Kira throws a ball and its trajectory is that of y equals -16x squared plus 32x plus 48, where x is time and y is height. At what time does the ball hit the ground? So in the chat, put your answers. Okay, I don't see any answers. Okay, so one person said they got this wrong, and yeah, I'm not sure anyone got it correct. However, does anyone at least know where to start? Okay, so a better question is probably where should we start? So, what do we know about, so what do we know? Okay, yeah. So Wanda said we find one of the roots, and that is good, right? That's what we're supposed to do. So the reason we find one of the roots is because y is the height. And because y is the height, when y is 0, that means the ball has hit the ground, right? And x is time, so okay. So someone in the chat put a negative answer. So the reason that would be wrong, the reason that it would not be a negative answer is because time is never negative. You can't say, oh, a second before I threw the ball, it hit the ground, because that doesn't happen, you know? In life, that doesn't happen. It doesn't hit the ground like a second before you do something, right? It always happens after. So that means that x, which is the time, has to be positive. So that means you have to find the positive root of this, right? So in the chat, does anyone know what the roots are? Or if you don't know what the roots are, do you know how we could factor this equation? Like where we could remove like perhaps a coefficient or something. And if not, I get that. But in the chat, does anyone have any ideas what we do next? So we already know that the x value, the x coordinate has to be positive, and we know that y has to equal 0. But you know what we do with that? Okay, I'm seeing no answers, so I shall go about how I would do it, right? So we would get 0 is equal to -16x squared plus 32x plus 48. However, we can see that 16 or -16 factors into all of these coefficients. So we can get -16 multiplied by x squared multiplied by -2x or minus 2x. And then we divide 48 by -16 and we get -3. So we get -16 times x squared minus 2x minus 3, right? And now using the quadratic formula, we can figure out that this has two factors. So we get -16 multiplied by x plus 1 times x minus 3, right? So x plus 1 times x minus 3. So using this, what time does the ball hit the ground? Anyone in the chat? Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I don't know if this is like you guys are not answering or what. Okay, so someone typed 16, so The thing is, the 16 doesn't really matter. When we have 0 is equal to negative 16 times something, right? We can just divide both sides by negative 16, and we're still going to get 0 is equal to x plus 1 times x minus 3, right? And someone else said x equals 0. Well, when we plug in x equals 0 to this, we get 48, right? So that means that the ball hasn't hit the ground. And someone else said 1. When we plug 1 into this, remember, for this to equal 0, one of these has to equal 0, right? For two numbers to multiply out to be 0, one of these numbers has to equal 0. So, and again, as I said earlier, the time cannot be negative. So that means that it has to be one of the roots that is not negative. Okay, yeah, so in the chat, I got the correct answer from Wanda. Good job. So it would be 3. And that's because when we get this, we know that the roots are going to be x equals negative 1 and x equals 3, right? And because we've already said that the time cannot be negative, that means that it cannot be negative 1, meaning the answer has to be 3. So the time that the ball hits the ground is at 3. So 3 units of time, it's probably 3 seconds. So good job to everybody who participated. The answer was 3. And also, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to unmute and ask, because I can't help you if I don't know what questions you have. Okay, problem 4. Jasmine realizes there are two numbers, a and b, for which x squared plus ax plus b has roots of a and b. Find the sum of a and b. So, I think one person, no, okay, wait, sorry. I don't think anybody got this correct. So, again, we're going to go for what we think the steps are. So anyone in the chat, what do you think our first step should be? Okay, yeah. So someone said find the roots. We're already given the roots, so we can't really find them. But so what would we do that so what would we do with the roots when we have them? Okay, someone also said solve the roots. Again, it would be wrong because we already have the roots. But what would we do with the roots once we have them? Which we have them right now. So what would we do with the roots? How would we use the roots to get from here to here? Okay, so someone said find their values, and yes, that's what we're going to do. However, do you know how we get there? Okay, so what we would do is, so we know that the roots are a and b. So we get x minus a times x minus b, right? Because that's just what it is when you so when you're trying to find a quadratic in this form, what you do is you multiply the roots together. You multiply x minus the roots together. So you get x minus a times x minus b is equal to x squared plus ax plus b. Okay, so let me just write this out. So now what we do is, so now what would we do with this? In the chat, does anyone know? And I'm seeing the same people participate. So again, there are lots of people in this chat or in this call. There are 7 of you. So please, 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 everybody participate. You know, I'm keeping like points right now. So if you participate, even if it's saying you don't know what you're supposed to do, at this point, I will still give you a point. Okay, so somebody said factor out the x. So here's the thing, we can't factor out the x until we have both of these in the same form, right? We can't do anything with these until this is x squared, until it's ax squared plus bx plus c for both sides. So what would we do to get this side in that form? So in the chat, people participate. So how would we get this into ax squared plus bx plus c form? I'm not seeing any answers, so I'm going to assume that means you guys don't know. So what we would do is we'd multiply it out. So we get x squared minus ax minus bx plus ab is equal to plus ab is equal to x squared plus ax plus b, right? Right. So what this means is that wait, give me a second. Okay, so we can cancel out the x squared. So we get okay, so we cancel out the x squared, and we get negative a or minus a minus b multiplied by x is equal, plus ab plus ab is equal to ax plus b. So you would think that now we wouldn't be able to solve it because it has an x and it has two terms and only one equation. But since okay, so someone said solve that equation / simplify. So how would we so first we need to set up two equations from this. So how would we get that? It's in the chat. Okay. So in the chat, how would we get two equations from this? So someone said move AB to the other side. Well, we wouldn't be able to get two equations from this though. And we need two equations so we're able to solve for both A and B. Okay, so I shall just show you how you would get two equations. So you know that the coefficient of x is negative a minus b, and the coefficient of x is a, right? So that means we get negative a minus b is equal to a. And the reason we get this is because AB doesn't have an x anywhere in it. A and b are just constants. So that means that this can never have x multiplied by it in this equation. So we get negative a minus b is equal to a, and then we have ab equals b because the same thing applies. Because the other terms have x's multiplied by them, that means that we can't actually do anything with them, right? It means that they aren't like terms of this. So we get negative a minus b equals a and ab equals b. And although this wasn't actually mentioned in the original problem, the roots are non-zero, okay? Anyways, so how would we solve these now? So how would we, okay, so if we want to substitute, how would we get some substitution, some form of substitution? Okay, so we isolate one of the variables. Okay, so how would we do that? So which equation would you want to take? Okay, so negative a minus b. Okay, so someone wanted to do that. However, when we substitute this into this, we're still going to get something in terms of a and b. So we would want to do, and we don't want to get something in terms of a and b. We only want to get it in terms of a or in terms of b. So what would we do? Okay, so someone said then substitute ab equals b into negative b. There's actually a much easier way to do it, so I think I shall explain. So ab equals b would just mean that a is equal to b divided by b, meaning a equals 1, right? You would immediately get something you can substitute. Now you get negative 1 minus b equals 1, and then you could add 1 to both sides. You get negative b is 2, so that means that negative b is 2, so that means that b equals negative 2. So you'd be able to do that. However, and then we'd add a and b together and we'd get -1. However, yes, we could substitute, we could do it that way, where we substitute this for a, and then we use the AB, we substitute AB into that. However, that requires more steps than what this would, right? So, and we want to simplify the problem. We want to make it as simple as possible for ourselves so it's less easy to make mistakes. So it would be better to do it this way. However, yes, you could do it that way. So good job to everybody who participated for this problem. It was kind of hard. So yeah. Okay. So problem number 5. Rose was throwing a ball and she realized that it reaches the same height as what it was thrown at t equals 10 if the maximum height attained by the ball is 15 feet and Rose threw the ball from 5 feet. Write an equation for the position of the ball in terms of t and y. So remember, t is measured in seconds and y is measured in feet. So I'm not sure anybody solved this. So again, where will we start? Okay, so someone said they weren't able to answer this. So okay, okay. So in the chat, anyone, do we know where to start? And remember, so I didn't specify this in the problem, but we want to express it in y equals a times t minus b, t minus b squared plus c. We want to express it in that format, so it's easier. Okay, so someone said match the numbers to their expressions. So yes. So for example, so in the chat, so 15 feet is the maximum height, and okay, so 15 feet is the maximum height, right? So what will we do with that? Okay, so let's look at a graph. Okay, so if this is a parabola and this is the maximum height, right? What is this also? Like, if this is the maximum point, what is this also? Yes, it's the vertex. Right, it's the vertex, right? So what we would do is we would find, so this is the vertex. So the x-coordinate, which is just how far away from the y-axis it is, or in this case, the t-coordinate would come first, right? And then we would have the y-coordinate, or how high it is, come second. So what in this vertex format does 15 feet represent? Yes, it represents y. So good job. Okay, so we would get y is 15, so that means that, and remember in this equation, we substitute this y variable for c. So now we get a multiplied, now we get a multiplied by t minus b squared plus, and then we know the y value is 15, so we get plus 15. And now we see that it reaches the same height as what it was thrown at from okay, so what this says is when it was thrown, it's the same height as what it is at t equals 10. So that means that t equals 0 and t equals 10 have the same y coordinate, right? So as I said earlier, there is a line of symmetry that there's a vertical line of symmetry through the vertex of a parabola. So that means that the vertex of the parabola, the t-coordinate of this parabola, should be halfway between 0 and 10. So what number would that be? Okay, good job. So it would be 5, right? So we get a multiplied by t minus b squared plus 5. So we get a multiplied by t minus 5 squared plus 15, right? And now all we have to solve for is a. So we know that the ball is thrown from 5 feet. So what can we write this as in a coordinate? So t comma y coordinate. What would that be? And remember, the time that a ball is thrown at the time that a ball is thrown at would be equal to 0, right? Okay, so I see one answer in the chat. Anybody else care to answer? Okay, so someone said, okay, so there were two answers that were given, and one person said 5, 0. Remember, when we're in this, so in the Cartesian plane or the coordinate plane, 5, 0 would be here, right? It would be somewhere here. But that's not what we're looking at. That would be when it hits the ground, right? But we want to look at what time it was thrown at. So it would be the y intercept, right? Right, so 0, 5. So somebody else said, okay, so somebody else said -5, 5. So remember, that would be here, and the ball is not thrown from here. The ball can't be thrown at a negative time. Remember, the time the ball is thrown is at t = 0, right? So that means that the ball is thrown from 5 feet, right? So that means we have 0, 5. So we can plug in 0, 5 to get a. So now we have y, okay, wait, sorry. So 0, 5, so 5 is the y and t is the 0, right? So we get 5 is equal to 25a plus 15, right? Okay, I can't write. Okay, equals 25a plus 15. So how would we solve this? Send the chat. So in the chat, how would we solve 5 = 25a plus 15? Okay, so someone, yes, you did get the, yeah. Okay, so what we would do is, so one person said we could divide by 5 first and then isolate the a, and someone else said we can isolate the a first and then divide. So, yeah. So, just to make it easier on us, let's divide it by 5 first, right? Smaller numbers are better, right? So we get 1 = 5a plus 3, right? So now we get this equation. So how would we solve for a now? What would be our next step? Right, so we would subtract 3 from both sides, and we would get -2 is equal to 5a, right? So now, what would a be? Okay. So in the chat, I see one answer. So remember, we're dividing by 5. We're dividing 5 from both sides. We're not multiplying by 5, because otherwise we'd get -10 = 25a. So make sure you're dividing by 5 and not multiplying. So we get -2 over 5, because we're dividing by 5, is equal to a, right? And this is just -0.4. So that means that our final equation will be equal to y equals -0.4 t minus 5 squared plus 15. So that did require a lot of steps. However, it's easy when you break it down into steps. So I've been saying this for some time, but if you don't know how to solve a question, break it down into steps and then solve it, and you will get the answer. So does anybody have any questions? Because I had very few people participate. Okay, so someone in the chat said no questions. Okay. And remember, you're going to get a point if you say you don't have questions or if you say you do have questions. So like, please, 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 participate. Okay, so I see no questions in the chat. So we shall move on. So, okay. So this is just the explanation. So now moving on to geometric sequences. What is a geometric sequence? So a geometric sequence is very similar to an arithmetic sequence, except instead of a common difference, it has a common ratio. So the common ratio will remain the same throughout the entire sequence. If it does not remain the same, then it is not a geometric sequence. So for example, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 has a common ratio of 2 because you're multiplying each term by 2 to get the next term. And that ratio stays the same throughout. In the sequence above, the common ratio is 2. So common ratios. So using this, find the common ratios of the following sequences. 3, 6, 12, 24, 48. So in the chat, what would that be? What would the common ratio be? Okay, everybody in the chat, what would the common ratio for number 1 be? Okay, so I'm seeing people participating. Okay, so everybody in the chat, right, a geometric pattern wouldn't be adding but multiplying. When you have an adding pattern, that would be an arithmetic sequence. When you have a multiplication pattern, it would be a geometric sequence. So hopefully that helps. So in the chat, so I only see 2 people participating actively. So if you're not participating, I do not know why, because this is, we aren't doing complicated stuff right now. We're just finding the common ratio, right? And the common ratio is just what we multiply one term by to get the next term, right? So you should just be able to use like simple division to get the answers. So everybody should be participating for this, right? There's 7 of you. So good job to Nikita and Wanda for participating. Yeah. Okay. So in the chat, please everybody participate. Private message me your answers. Okay. I'm going to start calling on people because, yeah, it's very quiet. Okay. So I'm just gonna go alphabetically. So Aditya, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And please, what is the common ratio of the first sequence? 3, 6, 12, 24, 48. So unmute and say your answer. Are you there? Can you guys hear me?
I'm sorry, my computer wasn't working.
Okay, so what is the common ratio of 3, 6, 12, 24, 48?
Is it okay if I put it in the chat?
Sure. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything, so I don't know if you've put something in the chat and I just can't see it, or if you did not. Yeah.
I'm just trying to type it out real quick. Sorry, my Chromebook is really laggy. Is it okay if I leave and join the meeting again?
Okay. Okay, so I shall call. Okay, so quick question. Do we have to say multiply by whatever as a common ratio, or can geometric sequences only be multiplication? So yes, since geometric sequences can only be multiplication, you do not need to say multiply. So you can just say that. Yeah. Okay, so Akshat, so I see you've answered in the chat, so would you care to unmute and say what the common ratio of the first sequence is and how you...
Yeah, sure. I think it's 2 because you can divide everything by 2. So that's fine.
Yeah, so good job for participating. So yes, you would multiply it. So if to get from this term to this term, you would multiply by, and you can see that from this term to this term, you have to multiply by 2 to get there. And to multiply this term to this term, you multiply it by 2. then same for this. So that means that the common ratio for this first thing is 2. So Aditya, I see is rejoined. In the chat, or would you care to unmute and say what the common ratio of this sequence is?
I'm a little confused on how to do this. Could you explain?
So the common ratio is just what you multiply one term by to get the next term by in a geometric sequence. So, because this is a geometric sequence. Yeah.
If that's the case, then to get 8, you have to multiply 2 by 4.
Right. Okay. Good job. So that would be what the common ratio of the second sequence would be. Okay. So I'm mostly going to be calling on people who aren't participating. So Prisha, would you care to unmute and in the chat, or sorry, would you care to unmute and say what the common ratio of the third sequence is? So what would you multiply this by to get this? Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, and I don't know if you have unmuted. Okay. Okay, so I see someone in the chat said divide by 12. Good job. That is what you would do. So it would be 1/12, not 12, because you're dividing by 12. So since the common ratio is 1/12, since you're multiplying by 1/12, the common ratio would be 1/12, right? However, if you say dividing by 12, that would also be the common ratio, because 1/12 is just dividing by 12. So good job. Okay, so Samyukta, in the chat, or unmute, and would you care to say what the common ratio of the last sequence is? Of 3, -2, 4/3, -8/9 is? So Samyukta, I don't know if you have unmuted or if you have not. In the chat or unmute, please say what the common ratio of the sequence is. Okay, so I called on someone. I don't know if you all could hear me when I called on that person, but Samyukta, can you please unmute and say what the common ratio is? Or okay, so I'm assuming you're not there then. So Will, would you care to unmute and say what the common ratio of the last sequence is? Okay. Okay. Will, would you care to unmute and say what the common?
I don't know.
Okay. So what? Okay. So what would you multiply 3 by to get -2? So what number multiplies by 3 to get -2? So unmute again.
Oh, I know. It's -2/3, right?
Yeah, it would be -2/3. So good job. Okay, so the common ratio would be -2/3 for the last one. So good job to everybody who participated. If you did not participate, then please participate. Okay, so these are just the answers. Okay. So geometric sequences, finding the nth term. To find the nth term of a sequence, you take the first term and multiply it by the common ratio n-1 times. So this in an equation form would be equal to an equals, so the nth term is equal to a1, which is just the first term, multiplied by r to the power of n-1. where r is just a common ratio and n is whatever number. So for example, if you had the ninth number, n would be equal to 9, so you would have r to the power of 9 minus 1, which is 8. So finding the nth term. Find the 18th term of the sequence 3, 6, 12, 24, 48. So, okay, so what would the, so first you need to find the common ratio, right, which is r. So wait, let me just write out the equation. So an, which is the nth term, is equal to a1, which is the first term, multiplied by r to the power of n minus 1. And for this, you can use a calculator because, I don't want to slow down class because, yeah. Okay, r is the common ratio. So remember, we were just finding the common ratio. So, yeah. So r would be the common ratio, if I can write. Okay. And n, so basically it's, if I'm finding the ninth term, then n would be 9. Okay, if I'm finding the 8th term, n would be 8. If I'm finding the 7th term, n would be 7, right? So n is basically the numbered term. So n minus 1 would be the exponent, yes. So yeah. Okay, so in the chat, I see that, okay, I see someone typed the ratio. So yes, the ratio is 2, and then the first term would be what? In the chat, what would the first term be? Okay, yeah. So the first term would be 3, right? And what would n minus 1 be? In the chat, what would n minus 1 be? Yeah. Okay, it would be 17. So now we just have to solve this. So 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 17 is just equal to 393,216. So yes, to the people who answered in the chat, you got the answer correct. Okay, I might have gone through that a bit too quickly for some people. So in the chat, does anyone have any questions? Okay, no questions. Okay, so I will move on then. Okay, so another problem. Find the 10th term of the sequence negative 100, 50, negative 25, 12.5, negative 6.25, ... Express your answer as a common fraction. Okay, so I shall just write the equation out again. So first term, and this time I'm going to write it as if like it were instead of with the variables, because someone said that confused them. So first term times ratio, and then I'm going to use n still because, yeah, ratio of to the power of n minus 1 would be the equation. So in the chat, what would the common ratio be? Okay, good job. It would be negative 1/2. So basically it's negative 1/2 because to get 50 from negative 100, you have to divide by 2, then multiply by negative 1, so negative 1/2. So the first term, what would that be? Okay, yeah. It would be negative 100. So we get negative 1/2 to the power of n minus 1 multiplied by negative 100, right? So now what would n minus 1 be? Okay, yeah, it would be 9, right? So that would mean that we would have negative 100 times negative 1/2 to the power of 9, right? So that would mean, so when it's an odd power of a negative number, that means that that number is going to have a negative in it, right? It's going to have a negative before. So that's going to mean that this negative and this negative cancel out, right? Sorry. Okay, so if these negatives cancel out, we just get 100 times 1 over 2 to the power of 9. So just a thing to remember, 100 is, when you multiply it by 1 over 2 squared, you get 25. So we'd get 25 over, and then 2 to the power of 7, because we've already used those first 2. We've already used 1 over 2 squared. We just have 1 over 2 to the power of 7 left to multiply out. So we get 25 over 2 to the power of 7, which is equal to 25 over 128, right? I am not exactly sure what that number is as a decimal, so let me just calculate that. Okay, yeah, so you guys got it correct. So it would be 190.1953125. So good job to everybody who participated. And we shall continue if no one has any questions. So in the chat, does anyone have any questions? Okay. If no one has any questions, okay, wait, let me just. Okay, if no one has any questions, we can move on. Okay, so find the 15th term of the sequence -2, 4, -8, 16, -32, 64, etc., etc. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to erase this. Okay, so everybody in the chat, what would the first term be? Okay, yeah, it would be -2. So we get -2, and then what would the ratio be in the chat? Yes, that would also be -2, right? So now, what would n minus 1 be? Right, it would be 14. So that would mean that we would do -2 times -2 to the power of 14, which is just -2 to the power of 15, and that's -32768, right? So that means our answer is -32768, right? So I got many people with positive answers. Okay, so when you have the negative here, right, because it's an even power, that means that there is no negative, because negative times negative is positive, right? So you would have negative times negative times negative times negative times negative times negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times negative 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 times negative, right? So each of these two will cancel out with each other, because negative times negative is positive, right? So we eventually get all of them have canceled out. So that means that the negatives in that -2 to the power of 14 cancel out. However, we are multiplying it by -2 after that. So when you multiply a positive by a negative, you just get a negative number, and therefore we get this. So yeah, and make sure that the sign is correct when you're doing it. Otherwise, you will get it wrong. Okay. So sums. The equation for finding the sum of a finite geometric sequence is a1 times r to the power of n minus 1 divided by r minus 1. So so r is a common ratio, and a1 is the first term, n is the number is the term number, and so 9 would have n equals 9. So the 9th term would have n equals 9. So we're just going to quickly go over why it works, just so you will understand how to get the equation. I obviously do not expect you to remember how we get the equation, but I do expect you to remember what the equation is, or like some of the logic behind it. So when you're in doing a problem that requires the sum, you will know how to solve it. Okay, so say we have a geometric sequence with n terms. Then that would mean that it would be a1, which is the first term, then a1 times r squared, a1 times r cubed, all the way to a1 times r to the power of n minus 1. And remember, it's n minus 1 because here we're multiplying it by 0, so 0 to n minus 1 is n. Okay, so the sum would be equal to a1 plus a1 times r plus a1 times r squared plus a1 times r cubed, all the way to a1 times r to the power of n minus 1. So a1 can be factored out, and we get s is equal to a1 multiplied by 1 plus r squared plus r cubed, all the way to r times r to the power of n minus 1. Then we multiply both sides by r, and we get we multiply both sides by r, and we get rs is equal. Okay, we multiply both sides by r, and we get rs is equal to a1 times r squared a1 times r plus r squared plus r cubed plus r to the power of 4, all the way to r to the power of n. Right? And now from there, we subtract the sum, which is a1 times 1 plus all the way up to r to the power of n minus 1 from both sides, and we get rs equals a1 times r plus r squared plus r cubed, all the way to r to the power of n, and we subtract from that s equals a1 times 1 plus r squared plus r cubed, all the way to r to the power of n minus 1. So now these terms cancel out. So this cancels out with this, right? Because we we're subtracting r plus r squared plus r cubed all the way to r to the power of n minus 1, right? So now we're just left with r minus 1 s equals a1 times r to the power of n minus 1, right? So now we just divide both sides by r minus 1, and we get s, or the sum, is equal to a1 times r to the power of n minus 1 divided by r minus 1. So that means that that's our equation, right? That is the equation we have gotten. So obviously, I do not expect you to remember this logic or how to get the formula, but please remember the formula, or at least write it down. Does anyone have any questions? So does anyone have any questions? In the chat, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So I see. Okay. Okay. So just so you guys can write it down, I put the equation up here. So please write it down, because it's very important. And writing stuff helps you remember. So make sure to write that. So it's a1, so the first term, times r to the power of n minus 1 over r minus 1. So find the sum of the geometric sequence that is 17, 88, all the way to 11, right? So it accidentally says pluses, those should be commas, but that would be the geometric sequence, or the sum of the geometric sequence. And do not find the sum by finding the terms, but use the equation. Okay, so what would the first term be? So what would a1 be? Okay, yeah, it would be 176. And then what would r be? Right, it would be 1/2. And then what would n be? Okay, in the chat, what would n be? So make sure you aren't getting a very big number, because this is the number of terms is relatively small. And so the way to calculate how many terms there are is, so you got the first term, right? So this is just equal to 11 times 16, right? That's 176. And this is equal to 11, right? 16, so we're getting from 16 to 0, right? So that means we eventually multiply by 1/16 to get to 11, right? So 1/16 compared to the ratio, so 1 is just 1 over 2 to the power of 4, right? And the reason we have 1 over 2 here in the first place is because that's a common ratio. So that means we have 4 terms, but we have to add 1 because we will not be including one of the end terms if we do not add 1, right? For example, if I had 1, 2, 4, 8, right? And I was like, oh, this is 2 to the power of 3, right? And I only use 3 terms, I would be missing either 1 or 8, right? So similarly, we have to add 1 to this. So we get, yes, we get 5 terms. So, we would plug in 5 for n. So we get 1/2, 1 over 2 to the power of 5 minus 1 over 1 over 2, right? So we would get 176 times negative 31 over 32 over negative 1/2, right? Over negative 1/2, right? And this would just be equal to negative 31 over negative 16, right? Because this would be equal to negative 16 over 32. Because 1 over 2 to the power, so 1 over 2 to the power of 5 is 1 over 32, right? So 1 over 32 minus 1 would be equal to negative 1 plus 1 over 32. And that would just be equal to negative 31 over 32. Yeah, okay. So we get 176 multiplied by 31 over 16, and as we stated earlier, 176 is just equal to 11 times 16. So we get 31 times 11, right? So this divided by this is 11. So 31 multiplied by 11 in the chat. What is your what would 11 multiplied by 31 equal? What is 31 times 11? Okay, good job. It is 341. Okay, so your answer would be 341. So does anybody have any questions about that? We will be doing a few more problems. So if you do want to get more practice, we will be. Oh, sorry, my internet, it says my internet connection is unstable, so I might have a bit of a bad connection. So sorry about that. Okay, so next question. Okay, so find the sum of the geometric sequence 2, 6, 18, 54, all the way to 4,374. So, first, okay, so should I walk you through it, or do you guys want to do it on your own? Okay, so, one person said they want to do it on their own, and one person said they want me to walk them through it. So I will walk you through this, and I think we do have another example, right? So, okay. Well, we don't have another example specifically for this. However, we do have problems after, so I will walk you through this. Okay? So, what would be the first term? So, yes, the first term would be equal to 2. Now, what would the common ratio be? Yes, it would be 3. So now what would n be? So remember to use the thing that I showed you guys. We would do, so we would see that this is 2, and this is 2 multiplied by 2, 1, 8, 7, I think. Yeah, I believe it's 2 and 8. right? So, okay, so someone got a number that was less than the greatest number. Remember, if all the numbers are positive or all the numbers are negative, your number the absolute value of your number should be greater than the most extreme number. Yeah, a lot of the times we mess up when we're first learning something, so, no worries. Okay, so this would be 2 multiplied by 2187, right? And we know that the common ratio is 3. So how many times does 3 go into 2187? So in the chat, what would it be? Somehow I doubt it goes in 729 times. So make sure you're getting a reasonable answer. And someone said 6. It would actually be 7. And remember, 2,187. What you could do is you could have used a calculator because the geometric sequences usually are very big, and you will need a calculator. But this is 3 to the power of 7, right? 2187 is 3 to the power of 7. So that means our greatest term is 2 times 3 to the power of 7, meaning that to get from 2 times 3 to the power of 0 to 2 times 3 to the power of 7, we have to have 8 terms, right? So that means n is 8. So that means we get 3 to the power of 8. Let me just. Okay, we get 3 to the power of 8 minus 1. Okay, so how we would find the number of numbers in a geometric sequence. So what you do is you find out what multiplies to be the first term and what multiplies to be the last term. So this would usually be the prime factorization. However, if you have something like 6 and then 216 and the common ratio is like 6, you don't need to find the prime factorization. You just need to find the factors, like some of the factors, right? Some of the factorization, right? So you would find the prime factorization of these. And then you would take the greater one, right? Or, sorry, not the greater one. You would take the end term and you would divide it by this term, right? So that, in this case, we would get 2,187 is what 4,374 divided by 2. So we get 2,187 as what this is divided by this. And now we find out how many terms the common ratio goes into it. So we would do so we find out how many times r goes into it, right? So if it goes into it a question mark amount of times, then we add 1 to it. And the reason for this is because we're actually counting from the first term times, so we're counting from A1 times, okay, wait, sorry. We're counting from A1 times the ratio to the power of 0 all the way to A1 times the ratio to the power of question, right? And if we don't add 1, we aren't including that r to the power of 0, right? So we have to add 1 to question mark to find the number of factors, right? Or not number of factors, number of numbers in this sequence. So we would so what we would do is so basically, just to summarize, we would take the last number divided by the first number, find out how many times the common ratio goes into that, and then we add 1, and that's the number of terms in the sequence. So I hope that answers your question, or that helps explain it again. Okay, so we get 3 to the power of 8 minus 1 over 3 minus 1, right? So what we get is 2 as the denominator and 2 here, so we can just cancel out those, and we get 3 to the power of 8 minus 1, and as we can see, 3 to the power of 8 minus 1, 3 to the power of 8 minus 1 is equal, okay, wait, sorry. Okay, yeah, the answer is wrong here, I think. Right, so 3 to the power of 8 would be equal to 6561. 6561 minus 1, sorry, it is 6560. So that means our answer is 6560, right? And also, if you did want to check it, especially for like smaller geometric sequences, you could always add the terms. However, in infinite geometric sequences, that wouldn't work because you would continually be adding terms forever and ever and ever, right? So you would need to remember the equation at least for the infinite geometric sequences. Speaking of infinite geometric sequences, what do we do when a geometric sequence is infinite, and how do we find the sum? So you can only find the sum of an infinite geometric sequence that converges. So converges just means that converges just means that the numbers get closer and closer to 1, or they become smaller and smaller, right? Otherwise, if the geometric sequence diverges, which means it gets greater and greater, or like the absolute value of each of the terms gets greater and greater, that would mean your answer would be infinity, because you're just adding numbers upon numbers upon numbers, and those are not getting closer to 0, right? So it would be going on forever. So the only way for a geometric sequence to converge is for the ratio to be between -1 and 1 non-inclusive. Because if we had a ratio of -1 or 1, it would be like 3. It would be, if it were -1, right? It would be 3 -3 3 -3 3 -3 3 -3, so on and so forth. And it doesn't end on any term, so it is both 0 and 3 at this. The sum would be both 0 and 3 at the same time, right? And you don't know which is which. So, like which one is the actual answer. So it can't have a common ratio of -1. And if it had a common ratio of 1, imagine if you added -2 to itself forever and ever, right? You would get negative infinity, right? So that would not be the answer. Or that would not be an answer you would want to get. So since n would equal infinity in an infinite geometric sequence, and any ratio to the power of infinity, since n would equal infinity in an infinite geometric sequence, and any number between -1 and 1 to the power of infinity is 0, that means we can get a1 multiplied by r to the power of n minus 1 divided by r minus 1, which is just the equation that we had earlier for the sum of a finite geometric sequence. That becomes a1, so the first term, multiplied by 0 minus 1 divided by r minus 1, right? And this simplifies to a1, negative a1 divided by r minus 1, which is a1 over 1 minus r, right? So that would be our answer. So that would be our equation. So you can see this up here in the top right. So the sum is equal to the first term divided by 1 minus r. So does anybody have any questions about it? In the chat, does anyone have any questions? If not, I can continue. Okay. Okay. So I'm hoping everyone was paying attention while I explained that, because we will be doing a few examples. So find the sum of the infinite geometric sequence 4, 2, 1, 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, so on and so forth. So how would we find this? So okay, so I'll walk you through. So what would the first term be? Yeah, the first term would be 4, right? So we get 4 over 1 minus r. So what is r? Okay, so it's 1/2, right? So 1 minus 1/2 is 1/2. So what is 4 divided by 1/2? Right, so this would be equal to 8. Because remember, when you do divided by 1 over 2, you're just multiplying by 2, right? So you would get 4 multiplied by 2, and that would be equal to 8. So that means our answer is 8. So good job to the people who did participate. Remember, if you're finding the sum of an infinite geometric sequence, the ratio is positive, then that means that the number, like the sum, is going to be greater than the greatest number, or it's going to be less than the least number if it's negative. Right, if a sequence is infinite and it diverges, you can't find the sum, simply because it would be it would just be infinity, right? And you can't find the value of infinity, right? So you can't find the value of the sum. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to everyone. So yeah, okay, so we get 8. Okay, so this is a word problem using this. A robot toy is malfunctioning. Instead of going in a straight line, it walks 1/3 of the distance it was supposed to, turns 180 degrees, walks 1/3 of the distance it previously walked, turns 180 degrees, and continues this pattern until it is at a standstill. If Joanna wound up the toy to walk 30 feet, how far will it actually walk? So I will let you guys solve this on your own because it is a word problem, and the equation is given to you. The equation you guys require is given to you. So yeah. Yeah, I will let you guys be for 2 minutes. So 10:43 is when I expect people to answer or say I don't know how to solve this. Okay, someone just asked if it means if he's walking 1/3 of his distance the whole time. No, it won't be. So, for example, if it was wound up to walk 9 feet, it would go 3 feet, then turn and go 1 foot, and then turn and go 1/3 foot, then turn and go 1/9 foot. So yeah. Okay, so I got an answer in the chat. I don't think it's correct. So yeah. Make sure you are not adding 30 feet to your answer at the end, because if you added 30 feet, 30 feet would be how much it's supposed to go, but 30 is never in that like geometric sequence. So. Oh, sorry, I wasn't speaking right now. I was giving you guys like a moment to do this problem. Oh, so someone asked if this someone asked if the robot toy yeah, it's okay. So somebody asked if the robot toy would just be walking like 30 or would just be walking 10 feet the whole time. So no, it wouldn't. It would go 10 feet, then like for example, if it was supposed to walk 9 feet, it would go 3 feet, then it would go 1 foot, then 1/3 foot, then 1/9 foot, and so on and so forth, right? And then someone else got the wrong answer. So I said, just make sure that your answer is not like too big of a number. Make sure you're not adding 30 to it, because the robot never actually walks a whole 30 feet. So, and above you can see the equation. So the sum is equal to the first term over 1 minus the common ratio. That's the equation for a infinite geometric sequence. Sum. The sum of an infinite geometric sequence. Okay, so it's 10:44. So I will walk you through this. Okay, yeah. That's okay if yeah. Okay, so somebody got the answer. So good job. So what you would do is you would take the first term, right? So first we have to write out a sequence that is the number of feet it walks, right? So the first time it walks, the first direction it goes, right? So it was supposed to go from here to here. It walks 10 feet, so here, right? Then it walks back then it walks back, right? So the sequence would be 10, then 10 thirds, 10 ninths, then so on and so forth, right? You would multiply it by 1/3. So you would get this, right? Dot, dot, dot. So um, when you, so you have to add 10, 10 thirds, 10 ninths, so on and so forth, an infinite geometric sequence, right? So you get A1, so the first term, which is 10, divided by 1 minus the common ratio. Now we can see the common ratio is 1/3, so we do 1 minus 1/3. So you get 2/3. And then you, so 10 divided by 2/3 is equal to 10 times 3 over 2, right? And this is just fractions, right? So 10 divided by 3 over 2, and that would give you an answer of 30 over 2, which is 15. So that means that it's going to walk 15 feet. So good job to Nikita who got it right. And to everyone else, I hope you were working on it, or if you had any questions, you should have asked me, so we could go over those questions. Okay, so okay, so we're going to go over interest because we're running short on time. However, there are questions, AMC questions or not AMC. There are questions you can look at after, which are about geometric sequences. Okay, so we're going to cover interest now. So what is interest? So sometimes people have to take loans from others, and this money that they borrow is called the principal. However, you usually have to pay what is called interest along with your money. Interest is just a fee for having borrowed that money, and it's calculated using interest rates. So interest rates can be applied to borrowing other things with monetary value. For example, paying more library fines the more overdue your book is. So what is interest? So in the library fines example, you have to pay simple interest. Every day a book is overdue, you have to pay a set amount of money, and you have to pay a little more, right? Your how much you owe to the library will increase every day, right? So this amount is fixed depending on how pricey a book is. So most books are worth $20, and you have to pay 0.5% of what the book is worth every day the book is overdue. So $20 would be the amount borrowed, and therefore the principal. And then 0.5% or 0.005 would be the interest rate. So every day the book is overdue, you have to pay 10 cents. So this is simple interest. Since the interest paid every unit of time, it remains the same. So if I borrow a library book and it's overdue by 10 days, and the price of the book is $20 and the interest rate is 0.5%, how much money do I owe the library in total? So this is including the principal or the 20 bucks. So, or the $20. So type your answer in the chat. So, how much do you owe the library after 10 days? If you owe, so someone gave me the correct number for the interest. However, give the answer for the interest plus the principal. So the principal is $20, so make sure you're adding $20 to the interest. Okay. And also, it would be better if you could private message me with your answers, so that if you are right, other people just don't copy, and if you are wrong, then I can just call up, yeah. Okay, so I think I shall explain. So somebody did get it right for the amount of interest, but they didn't get it right for the total amount. So if I borrow a library book and it's overdue by 10 days and the interest rate is 0.5% every day and the book's cost is $20, then what we would do is we would find 0.5%. So remember, this is simple interest. So we would find 0.5% of $20, and we find that this is so 20% divided by 100 would be 0.2 divided by half would be 0.1, so that means we owe $0.1 or 10 cents. every day, right? So it's overdue by 10 days. So we multiply this by 10 and we get $1 is due, right? We owe the library $1 in interest or in loans, right? In fees. And then we have to add the $20 so we can find the total amount that I owe. And we would get $1 plus $20, and that is equal to $21 is how much I owe the library in total. So good job to the person who got it right. So yes, it would be $21 is how much I owe the library. Okay, so to put this into a formula, what we do is A, which is the total amount or the interest plus principal, is equal to the principal multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate times the amount of time. So in the previous example, what we did was we took the principal, right? We would have found 20 multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate, which is 0.05, or 0.005, multiplied by the number of days, which is which would then be 0.005 times 10, which is 0.05, right? So we get 1.05 multiplied by 20, so this would be equal to 21, right? This would be the interest plus principal is 21. So this is just putting it into an equation form. So a problem. Let's look at a problem. Mark borrows $10 from Emily with simple interest of 15% a day. What is the least integer number of days after which Mark will have to pay her back at least twice as much as he borrowed? So in the chat, answer, or would you guys rather I walk you through this? Would you rather I like give you guys steps, or would you rather you do it on your own? Okay, I see 2 people want to do it on their own, so I'll leave you be for 2 minutes. So 10:54 is when I expect an answer. Remember, this uses inequalities. It says pay back at least, so it doesn't have to be the exact amount of days. Remember, it has to be the least integer number of days. So that's the only help I'm going to give you until we solve this. But yeah. Okay, I've gotten 2 answers so far. It's 10:53. So everybody make sure you're participating, make sure you're doing the problem. Right now I'm just tallying up the scores. So yeah. Okay, so we will go over. So I have gotten 2 different answers, so good job to everybody who participated. Right? Who participates right now. So Mark borrows $10 from Emily with simple interest of 15% a day. Right? So how much would that be? How much is 15% of $10? Okay, in the chat, how much is 15% of $10? Okay, what's 0.15 times 10 in the chat? What is 15% of $10? Okay, yeah, good job. So the answer would be equal to, so not the answer. The interest per day would be $1.5, right? $1.50, right? So we get 1.5x plus 10 is the amount owed, right? And then this is the number of days. So we're asked how many days after which Mark will have to pay her back at least twice as much as he borrowed. So what this is asking is, after how many days will this be greater than 10 times 2, which is 20, right? So how would we solve this now? So what would we do to solve it? Yeah, we would subtract 10 from both sides, and we get 1.5x is greater than 10, right? And then now we just divide both sides by 1.5, and then we get, so we get x, so we get divide by 1.5 is multiplied by 2/3, so we get 20/3, right? X is greater than 20/3, right? And 20/3 is equal to 6 and 2/3, right? But after 6 days, Mark will owe less than $2, right? Or sorry, not $2. Mark will owe less than twice the amount he borrowed, right? So that means that we have to round up. So that means after 7 days, he will owe twice as much as he borrowed. So, is that clear for everyone? Everyone, okay. Okay. Okay, let me just change the score. Okay. Okay, so simple interest and linear equations. So you can connect simple interest to linear equations. So the graph on the bottom connects the equation for simple interest, which is also on the bottom, to a linear equation. Or sorry, it's on the top now. Okay, so here's the thing. This graph, it links to a Desmos graph. You can open it up on your own time and play around with it just to see, like, what it is. But yeah. It connects to simple interest also on the bottom to a linear equation. So what you would do is, if you graph a linear equation, then the y-intercept would be p. Yeah, sure. Okay, the y-intercept would be p, and that would just be the principal, the amount you borrowed. The interest rate would be the slope, which is just r. Then the amount of money owed is the height, right, is the y value, and the time, or t, is going to be the how far horizontally, or x, right? So compound interest. So there is another type of interest called compound interest, and it's where instead of taking x% of the original amount, you compound or add to all the previous day's amount. So what this would mean is that you are finding x. So for example, if I found if I had to pay 10% compound interest every day, right, on $100, this is what it would look like. So the first day, you owe $100, right? Then the second day you owe 10 more dollars, right? And then the third day, on the compound interest, you owe $11, and then on the simple interest, you still owe $10, and it continues. This would be you owe 12.1 more dollars now, still 10 here, and then you owe $13.31 on the fourth day, and still 10 here. So we are just finding the percentage of the, so for example, for this $10 thing, right? So we are taking 10% of how much I owe total right now, right? So we, for example, at the 100, when I owe $110, what that means is that we are taking 10% of that $110 when we're finding the interest. That's compounded, right? And then I owe 100, I owe $122.1, right? And or 100, sorry, I can't. Okay, we owe $121, right? And then we're taking 10% of that. So we're taking the interest rate on how much I owe currently at the moment, rather than how much I borrowed at the beginning. So the formula for compound interest is P multiplied by 1 plus R divided by N to the power of N times T, right? And N now stands for the number of times the interest is compounded over a unit of time. So for example, if I have to pay interest quarterly, that means I have to pay it 4 times a year, right? So N would be 4 and T would be the number of years. T is the number of unit of time. So again, T would be 4. If I had to, so if I have to pay quarterly, N would be 4 and T would be, and I had to pay for 5 years, then T would be 5. So P is still the principal and R is still the interest rate. So it is beyond the scope of this lesson. However, if you want to know why this formula works after class, you can look at the slides. And again, you can send us any questions at Mathema Official, at our email. We'll be happy to answer them. After all, the Google Classroom is closing today, or tomorrow. So you might not be able to ask questions you have in the Google Classroom. So you borrowed $20 from your brother, who said his interest rate is 40% compounded annually. You didn't realize what the effect of that interest rate would be, and you forgot you borrowed money for 5 years. Now your brother is demanding you pay him back. How much money are you supposed to pay him? So I will work out this problem with you, and then you can ask any questions you have. So you borrowed $20 from your brother. So that means P is 20, right? And then 1 plus, and then the interest rate is 40% or 0.4. And then it's just yearly. So we have 1 time every year we have to pay it. And then we have 5 multiplied by 1 time every year. So we just get 20 times 1.4 to the power of 5, right? So 1.4 to the power of 5 would be part of our answer, would be this part, right? So would be how much interest we now owe. So that means that when we solve this, we get $107.56, right? When we multiply it out. So it would actually multiply to $107.5648, but we round it because we don't pay in fractions of cents. So does that make sense to everyone? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Okay, so people are saying it makes sense, so that's good. If I borrowed $1,000 from a friend with an interest rate of 3% compounded weekly, how much money do I owe after 3 months? And just assume every month has 4 weeks for this problem. So I will solve this, right? Okay, so if I borrow $1,000 from a friend, so that means that the principal is 1,000, right? 1,000 multiplied by 1, right? Plus R, right? Which is 3%, right? And because we have weeks, so this is 0.03, right? And because we have weeks as the number of terms, we don't do anything with n. And then n is 1, and then t is 12, because 3 times 4 is 12. So we get 1.03 to the power of 12 multiplied by 1,000, right? So 1.03 to the power of 12, when we solve this, we get 1425.76, right? Because 1.13, I think I might have messed that up. So if I do 1.03 to the power of 12, I get 1.42576089, right? Which is what's shown up there. And we multiply that by 1,000, and we get 1,425.76, yada yada yada, for how much I have to pay. And then we don't pay in fractions of cents, so we round it to $1,425.76, right? So somebody in the chat said $1,120. I think you might have done it to the power of 4, perhaps. But the answer would be $1,425. And just, I want to note that this right here is a typo. This should read 0, right? But the rest of the math is correct, right? So, yeah. Okay, so we will be, okay, wait. Okay, I think I skipped over our break somewhere. Okay, I forgot to put in the break. I will, okay, 5-minute timer. Okay, so we will have a 5-minute break right now. And I will pause the recording. So we will now be doing a Kahoot. So we had planned on doing 2, if we got the time, but it's fine. Oh god. Okay, I don't know why I'm copying the link. Okay, so I will set up this. Okay, so this Kahoot is on geometric sequences. So yeah, hopefully you were paying attention during that. So everybody should join. Okay, oh, this is gonna load. Okay, so okay, this is being rather slow. Okay, but open up kahoot.it, right? Yeah, after this we can so if you okay, so if you do get like first, you will get 5 points. If you get second, you will get 3 points. If you get first, you'll get 6 points. If you get second, you're gonna get 4 points, and if you get third, you're gonna get 2 points. So 6, 4, 2. Okay. So I see 4 people in here. You know, there are 7 of you. So I don't know if you guys have like technical issues right now. Okay, there are 5 of you in here. So Samyukta and Prisha, please join the Kahoot. Okay, I will get started at 11:15 if not everyone has joined by then. Oh, and also happy like almost 4th of July, because like it's like 2 days from the 4th of July. Okay. Okay, so okay, I'm just gonna start now because yeah, sure. I can wait. Yeah, a lot of people have set off fireworks since like early June, so like I've been hearing fireworks a lot these past like months. Yeah. Okay. So okay, to the person who messaged me asking me to wait, please like join quickly. Yeah, my like in the middle of the day I hear firecrackers or whatever, like I hear like fireworks, and it's like, you know, what's the point? Okay, somebody just left the Kahoot. Please rejoin. You know, yeah. It's kind of pointless, like, if you don't light it in the dark, but, like, at the same time, most people, like, still light it during the day, so, I don't know. Okay, so I shall start this, Kahoot, right? You can join in the middle of the Kahoot, right? But, like, it would be great if you all could join now. Okay, so question number 1. The first term of a geometric sequence is 24 and the ratio is 1/2. What is the third term? So remember, you would multiply by 1/2 3 times, and then you would multiply that by 24. So, okay, there are 4 answers. Okay, and okay, there are 5 answers, so 5 people, I think. So the answer would be 6, right? So, okay, wait, sorry. You would multiply by 1/2 2 times, right? Because the first term is 24, then you get 12 for the second term, then you get 6 for the third term. I misspoke earlier. I said 3 times. It would be 2 times. Remember, the nth term is the ratio to the power of n minus 1 multiplied by the first term. So good job to Wanda. Your first place right now. Okay, so what is the common ratio of the geometric sequence 2, -6, 18, -54? So basically, what do you multiply 2 by to get -6? Okay, I see 3 answers. I saw 5 answers for the previous question. Yeah. So please, please, please put your answers in, you know? Okay. Okay, so the answer is -3. So what you would do, so what would you multiply 2 by to get -6? You would multiply it by -3, right? So that would mean the common ratio is -3. So good job to everyone who got that right. Yeah, okay. So question number 3. The first term of a geometric sequence is -160 and the ratio is 0.25. What is the fourth term? So remember, you would take the ratio to the power of n minus 1 and then multiply it by the first term. So you should be able to get this. So remember how you solve to get it. You can, when you're solving for this, you can just manually do it. Like, you can find the second term, then the third term, then the fourth term. So it would be negative blank, then negative blank, then negative blank. You know? Okay, so we would take the first term, right? So we'd find it to be -160. Now to find the fourth term, we take the common ratio, and so that's 1/4 to the power of n minus 1, and that would be 3, right? So that would be 1/64, right? So that would be -5/2, which simplifies to -2.5. So I see everyone besides one person got it correct. That person solved for the third term. Make sure you're solving for the fourth term. Okay. Okay. The second term of a geometric sequence is 5 and r, or the common ratio, is -6. What is the third term? So to get from the second to third term, you would multiply it by the common ratio to the power of 1, right? Because to get from one term to the next, you would multiply it by the common ratio. So that should basically give you your answer. Okay, so the answer is -30, and you just multiply 5 by -6 and you get -30. Someone said 30. Make sure you read the sign, make sure the sign is correct, you know. You don't want to get it wrong. Okay, good job, Wanda. You're still first. Okay, so the first term in a geometric sequence is 3, and the fourth term is 81. What is the common ratio? Okay, so remember to get from, okay, so I'll give you guys some help. So this would be 3 times r, right? This would be 3 multiplied by the common ratio. This would be 3 multiplied by the common ratio squared. And this would be 3 multiplied by the common ratio cubed, right? So, so 3r cubed equals 81. So what would that mean r is? Okay, yeah, so the answer is 3, and that's because 3r cubed is equal to 81. So you get 81 divided by 3 is 27, then the cube root of 27 is just 3, so that means that the common ratio is just 3. Okay, Nikita's moving up. So in a common sequence, A4 is negative 100, A5 is less than 0, and A6 is negative 25. What is R? So what is the common ratio? So remember the sixth term would be, okay, would be the fourth term multiplied by the ratio squared, right? Because to get to the fifth term, you'd multiply by the ratio. Then to get to the sixth term, you'd multiply by the ratio squared. So that means negative 100 multiplied by the ratio squared equals negative 25. So now you have to solve. Yeah. So negative 25 divided by negative 100 is 1/4. 1/4. The square root of 1/4 is just 1/2. So that means your answer should have been the circle. Okay. Next problem. Okay. In a geometric sequence, the first term is 4 and the fourth term is negative 108. What is the sixth term? So remember, to get from the first term to the fourth term, you multiply the first term, which is 4, multiplied by r to the power of 4, which is the number of the term, minus 1. So 4r cubed is equal to negative 108, right? Then you divide both sides by 4, and you get r cubed is equal to negative 27, right? So that would mean r is equal to what, right? And then to get from the fourth term to the sixth term, you just multiply the fourth term, which is negative 108, by the ratio squared, right? Which would be equal to your answer. So there are 3 answers so far. Remember to do the problem, you know. Okay, so this r, right, you solve from this, right? So you get the cube root of negative 27, then you find the square of that multiplied by negative 108. So I see 5 answers so far. I think there's 6 people in this Kahoot. Okay, so the answer would be negative 972. So 3 people chose the wrong answer. So, okay, let me just quickly move this. Okay, so we would get, okay, so this is what we would get, right? So we would get r is equal to negative 3, right? And the reason we get negative 3 is because the cube root of negative 27, so what number multiplies by itself 3 times to get negative 27 is negative 3. So we do negative 3 squared and we get 9, right? Because when you multiply negative 3 by negative 3, you get 9 since the negatives cancel out. So negative 108 multiplied by 9 is equal to 972, and that thing is negative because the negative sign here. So that means you get this triangle answer. So to everyone who got that wrong, hopefully you understand how to do it. Oh, okay. Nikita's in the lead now. Okay. So what is R in the geometric sequence 1000, 700, 490, 343, etc., etc.? So what would you multiply 1000 by to get 700? And what would you multiply 700 by to get 490? Make sure you are not accidentally like thinking the wrong number or something. Okay, I see two answers. It's 26 seconds now. So what number would you multiply 1000 by to get 700? You know. Okay, so most people put 0.7, but other people put 0.007. So to get from 1000 to 700, you multiply by 7/10, right? And remember, 7/10 would just be 0.7. 0.007 would be 7 over 1000, which would make your second term 7, and it clearly isn't. So make sure that you don't get the decimal incorrect. So, oh, good job to Will for having the highest answer streak. Okay. So in a geometric sequence, A2, or the second term, is 125. A is greater, so the third term is greater than 0, and the fourth term is 3125. So what is the first term? So remember, to get from the second to the fourth term, you multiply by r squared, which is the ratio squared. To get from the second term to the first term, you divide by r. Oh, oof. If it's auto-clicking, I can't really do anything, but like, that's sad. I don't know if reloading it would help because it might just leave you, like, exit you from the game. Okay, so two people are just like, it's auto-clicking. Okay, so to get from 125 to 3125, remember what you're getting is you're multiplying it by 25, right? You're multiplying 125 by 25 to get 3125. That means the common ratio is 5 because when we multiply A2 by something it could be plus or minus 5. However, since A3 is positive, that means that the common ratio also has to be positive. Since a positive times a positive is positive, but a positive times a negative is negative. So we get 5 as the common ratio, so we do 125 divided by 5, and we get 25 as our answer. So many people put 5. Make sure you were solving for the first term and not the common ratio. Okay, Akshat has moved up. And Nikita is still in first. So the second term of a geometric sequence is 84, and the ratio is negative 0.1. What is the fifth term? Okay, so to get from the second term to the fifth term, remember you're going to have to multiply by r to the power of 3, right? Okay. Okay, so you're going to have to multiply by r to the power of 3. So make sure you're doing that. Okay, so r to the power of 3, and what's negative 0.1 to the power of 3? That would be negative 1 over 10 to the power of 3, right? So using that moment, sorry. Okay, so 4 people have answered, so that's great. 5 people have answered, so we have only 15 seconds left. So, okay, so what you would do, so r is negative 0.1, right? So when you find that cubed, it's negative 1 over 1,000, right? So you multiply negative 1 over 1,000 by 84, and you get negative 84 thousandths. So, or negative 84 thousandths. So that would mean the last number would be in the third place, or in 3 places after this, so that would be the thousandths place. So you get negative 0.084. Um, so we just have 3 more questions. I'll tell you guys the score then. And yeah. In a geometric sequence, A2, or the second term, is 200 and A4 is 12.5. What could A3 be? So remember, the common ratio can be positive or negative. So they haven't said anything which tells you definitively if it's positive or if it's negative. So I see 2 answers. So remember, to get from the second term to the fourth term, you're multiplying by the ratio squared. Okay, you're multiplying 200 by r squared to get 12.5. So what multiplies by 200 to get 12.5? And then you would find the square root of that, right? To find the ratio. And that square root could be positive or negative. Okay, yeah, so it could be 50 or negative 50. So the reason for this is the common ratio can be negative 4 or 4, right? So, negative 1/4 or, negative 1/4 or 4, right? Or, negative 1/4 or 1/4, right? So 200 times 1/4 is 50, 200 times negative 1/4 is negative 50. So those could be your 2 answers. So, okay. So what is r in the geometric sequence with a1, or the first term, equals 8, and the second term is greater than 0, and the third term is 4? Okay, so remember that the common ratio in this instant has to be positive. Otherwise, it won't be like the common ratio, you know. It won't make a2 greater than 0. Okay. So the answer would be equal. So 8. So what multiplies by 8 to get 4? You multiply by 1/2. So that means you find square root 1/2, right? However, okay. So I don't. Okay. So you get 1 over square root 2 as the square root of that, right? As square root 1/2, right? Is 1 over square root 2. So that means your answer is 1 over square root 2. And yeah. Okay. Last problem or last question. And yeah. In a geometric sequence, the first term is 90 and the ratio is -1. What is the 12th term? So remember, to find the 12th term, you multiply the common ratio, you do the common ratio to the power of the value of n minus 1, and then you and then you multiply that by the geometric sequence's first term. Okay, so it would be -90. So remember, all even. So 12 minus 1 would be equal to 11. So that means that 11, you do -1 to the power of 11. That would be -1. -1 times 90 would be equal to -90. So that means our answer is -9. Okay, so our podium. So first or third is Wanda. Second is Akshat, and first is um, Nikita. Okay, so good job. So I said first place would get 6 points. Then second place would get 4 points, right? So okay, would get 4 points, and then third place would get 2 points. So okay, so the scores right now the scores are for today are Nikita at 50, Wanda at 47.5, Aditya Akshat at 6.5, Aditya at 3, and Prisha at 1/2 point. So good job to everyone. um, I will post something in the Google Classroom with the standings for this week, which we kept for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I don't think we did it Monday. And good job to everyone. Thank you for participating. Please fill out the form, the Google form, the feedback form. Yeah, we get a podium this week for the Google Classroom. It'll be the top 3. And I hope to see you again next year. And thank you for coming. It's been great teaching all of you.